Good morning, America. Doug, how are you?
I'm actually really good. I went to bed very late last night. Our son LJ and his buddy, his farmer buddy from north of here by 90 miles or so, came home after watching the Pacers game, and for some reason I clicked on the State of the Union speech, and hey, I had only had it on for like 2 minutes, but they walked in and I felt embarrassed
That you were watching it?
I was watching the State of the Union speech. Isn't that crazy?
What if we all just got on Zoom and made our own State of the Union, what we perceive it is, and then merged them all together? Wonder what everybody would think.
I'm on this like state of mind thanks to my friend Big A, where I'm really thinking critically about affirmations
Yeah,
and how I've been addicted to attaboys in my life.
yeah.
And I wondered what it would be like if a leader said, hey, look, I'm going to give a speech. I don't need your affirmations. Let's aim for value, connection, transformation. So if you love it, please just tell people about it. Don't give me the claps and the hoops and the hollers and all this stuff. And if you hate it, please don't boo me, but tell other people why you hate it. And let's just work together. So I that's what I thought of when I was watching the speech.
Somebody was struggling in my circle yesterday, and they sent me this meme that said, leaders, our burden is to take bold, dramatic actions. And then he says, should those fail? And that's what I was telling him is,
When those fail.
when you are a leader, you should expect failure. You should expect things to go opposite, because you got to make a decision. That's where the point is one of my principles in life is those who make the most decisions with the greatest accuracy in the shortest amount of time will make the most money. And it is hard to be that person.
And then if that person can communicate it, then you've got something really special.
Yeah, being a decision maker is not an easy thing, and being a leader is not easy, because leaders don't win popularity contests usually. So it's an interesting thing. Well, I wanted to talk to everybody today about risk and how we at Gimbal look at risk, because I don't know of any of our peers that look at it like we do. Patrick does.
Patrick does. We've got another friend, Ron, who does.
Yeah. Okay.
We've got a couple friends who do. And should we ever go toast, you should call these guys. They would help you. They'd be great.
Yeah. And so when I started thinking about, I'm going to put it up on the screen, like numerically, so you guys can you see us making decisions? All you get is the confirmations, and I want to talk through numerically what is going on right here and on Doug's right here. And when I started doing that and preparing that, I realized I need to talk about some other ideas, because making decisions, sometimes you have to take it through a filter, and going through that filter may look different than what everybody else is telling you. And I can go into that next week when we talk about risk, but here's the filter that I kind of started. Oh yeah, I'm going to share this with you guys, because it didn't do you any good.
You did those beautiful colors.
I got skills. Amanda and I were talking about like their 62-year-old skills, but like I don't even know why these dots are right here. But
thought bubbles.
Is that what they are? That they didn't look that way when I started. And so what I was suggesting is you need to talk not only about risk, but ignorance and foolishness. And when I started thinking about ignorance, foolishness, and risk, they're catalysts to what I think are fear, anxiety, and depression. And I say this from a point of personal experience. So
been there, done
that, had the heart palpitations, trip to the emergency room, sleepless nights, all that. And having to step back from it helped me to make better decisions as a man. And so this is, I think maybe one of the most valuable things we'll give you on one of these shows, in my opinion, Doug, but you'll probably come up with something more valuable. So like if you tell somebody they're ignorant, that would hurt their feelings, right?
That would not be the affirmation I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But if it was from a friend, I'd really think about it.
Well, I had Miss Castle in Word Power at Evansville Harrison, and
What is word power?
it breaks words down so you understand the King's English better. So you expand your vocabulary. And she was a chain smoker. I don't think she did it in the class, but and I love her, don't get me wrong. Like most people didn't like her. I learned so much in Word Power, but the word ignorance, it starts from ignoring. And everybody ignores stuff, right? And so yeah, so I don't know if it's Latin or not.
I just like that you're breaking the word down.
Well, that's what Miss Castle taught me. She taught me a lot of stuff, and like I got a C in her class, but I got the equivalent of an A because it made me think.
You're still talking about it today.
Right, I learned a lot, and I don't really think I was average, even though I got a C, because I don't think anybody else is still thinking about it, right? Like that's what a C means, you're average, right? But it caused me to think beyond her class. So here's to you, Miss Castle. I'm sure those cigarettes got you a long time ago. So, let's just, so you guys you can take a screenshot of this if you want. Ignorance, foolishness, and risk are catalysts to fear, anxiety, and depression. And what's this got to do with investing? I don't know. Let's just see what the next screen says if I can figure out how to get to the next slide. Here we go. Next slide. According to Webster, ignorance is lacking knowledge. Like we're all ignorant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the ignorance that we try to backfill for you is to improve our knowledge of the markets, of investments, of financial planning ideas. And so whatever ignorance you might have, which you probably wouldn't go out and pound your chest that I'm ignorant, but I'd like to think that we bring wisdom in that ignorance, that you maybe lack knowledge. And so, but you can plug this into any area of life, right? Like if you're feeling anxiety, it may be a result of ignorance about something. And so then foolishness, again, you don't want to be called the fool, but foolishness is to lack good sense, judgment, or discretion. I think about the ancient King Solomon. When I think about foolishness, he was reported to be the wisest man to ever exist up till his lifetime, right?
When I think about foolishness, I think about, I don't know, this is probably First Doug chapter 1, rather than the actual Bible, but as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool to his folly.
That's in Proverbs, and that was Solomon's writing. Yeah, I'm speaking next week to a group of people, and that's part of what I was thinking about, because foolishness is different than ignorance, right? And foolishness, we've talked about foolishness on the show recently when we've talked about gambling. Like we've talked about the foolishness of gambling is that unless you're gonna take the time that Billy Walters did in his gambling, you're going to lose money gambling, most likely.
It's just going to pull you to return to it.
Yes, and it can become an addiction, right? So you can lose money, which is futile in its effort, but foolishness is really probably an epidemic. I would say foolishness is a lot, and if you're trying to reason through a situation and all you have is foolishness, you're going to be like the dog returning to his vomit. And so
what do you do when all the information that you can get your hands on is foolishness?
Is you probably need to decide, I need to figure out how to gain some wisdom. For me, there are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, and somebody told me a long time ago that it takes 5 minutes to read. I don't even know what today is. What is today? The 8th? So if you read the 8th proverb today, you're going to give up 5 minutes of your life. Tomorrow, Proverbs 9, and so on. I did that for 20 years. Like that was part of my life. I didn't get it every day, but I got the lion's share of it. I don't do it as much now, but what it does is what King Solomon did is he pointed out this is a foolish decision and this is a wise decision. And most of those decisions are pretty common today. They're not unusual. Like just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender. That taught me to encourage you all not to be heavy in debt, because you may not be ruled by the lender, the bank, but you're going to be ruled by the employer who is paying you to pay the bank for the debt that they're carrying. And so understanding that being ruled by somebody you don't need to be increases stress and anxiety, it can lead to depression, was part of how we got to the point of encouraging people to reduce their tendency towards debt, to give peace of mind, right? Like that's what I think that's what I texted you when we were talking about this, is that these ideas I think can lead our friends and clients to a more joyful life. And so foolishness is bound up in the heart of the child, right? Like it's like we both parented a lot of kids, and you can just go hang out with some kids and see what foolishness looks like, and you can get a glimpse of it. So first we talked about ignorance and foolishness, and then risk.
To have a role model like Mr. T, growing up in the 80s, who says, "I pity the fool." That was helpful.
I don't know if you can say that today.
I know. I don't know if there's role models out there today who would say, "I pity the fool."
Yeah, because nobody really talks about foolishness today.
No, because it's your own truth, whatever's truth for you.
Yeah, but we're applying these ideas today, not only about life, but these ideas go specifically towards the market.
Buying and selling.
Towards the market.
My favorite subject.
Yeah, towards the markets.
Supply and demand.
Man, and man, how many times I think it was Tyson that said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I've literally been punched in the face, like as a kid in sports and other situations, and that'll square you away. And foolishness, you will get punched in the face, and you may not even know it's your foolishness that did it. But then with risk, you can imply ignorance and foolishness and put yourself into risky situations, right? And risk, there's two definitions that I lean into. One is risk is the possibility of loss, which a lot of you, that's probably what you think about. The other is an unexpected outcome. And so what I think we do uniquely is we have expected outcomes when we're making investment decisions for you. And so that essentially, from that second terminology, reduces risk by having an expected outcome.
This, Pete, is we're talking, I mean, this presentation you put together is right brain hemisphere creativity. But if you know the possibility of loss, you can put some left brain, or you can put your left brain to work, or left side of your brain to work, and get some numbers down. Get some expectations in place.
And the possibility of loss, right? That's part of it, or an unexpected.
The reality of loss.
Yeah, and you can just figure out this is what loss I'm willing to take. So you have the possibility of loss or an unexpected outcome. But let's step away from investments for a second. Somebody reached out to me this week and asked me to meet with them and talk to them about sabbaticals, because they don't know anybody to talk to about sabbaticals.
Yeah, you and I have both done it.
Right. And so a sabbatical was a risky event, because like this fellow that asked me, I didn't know anybody I mean, you could talk to maybe pastors and academic people, but actually in the business world, I didn't know anybody that had taken a sabbatical. And so the risk of the possibility of loss in that example was I could have got fired by clients when I turned over the client book to you while I was gone, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and I understood that. So the idea that a client would fire me was not an unexpected outcome. As I was considering stepping away from the business for at least 90 days, it's 90 to 100, I assumed that somebody was going to fire me. I just made that assumption, and so that was no longer a risk to me. Who it was the risk. I didn't know who was going to fire me, but I just assumed you had only had a few years experience at that point, and so there was people would lose confidence in
Yeah.
you, but I had confidence that you had to learn this in order for you to get to where you are today. So I had to risk those relationships, and I was willing to do that.
Yeah, and the foolishness that's out there, the groupthink that's out there is, oh, that must be nice.
That you
How could I do that? That's irresponsible to
could
do
take
that.
a sabbatical.
Yeah, why would you waste the money on that? Why would
Right.
you spend the time away from that? That's the groupthink foolishness.
Yeah, and that just this wasn't in my notes, but that word sabbatical comes from the idea of Sabbath, or to rest, restore, recharge. And I don't think, like, without taking the risk of that sabbatical, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you today. I think this business would have worn me out by now.
The sabbatical that I took in your RV was probably the best thing we've ever done and will ever do as a family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like mine was in an RV as well. And so the risk to me is I jumped in a rented RV, right? I'd never driven anything that big. And my first day of driving it, I was in rush hour traffic in Chicago, Illinois, had no idea what I was doing. And there was something about taking risks that really brings life to your soul, I think. Like if you try to avoid all possibility of loss and all unexpected outcomes, I think you're dead.
I like your buddy's definition of risk, uh, or calculated risk, where you take in the factors and then you make a decision to go for it.
Yeah.
And that guy happens to have flown F-15s.
Well, and he said part of the risk is alleviated by training, right?
Exactly.
And I like to tell our friends that are on the show today, we've spent, I'd say, hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably 100,000 at least, on this idea, on risk and how to mitigate risk for you.
And countless hours of just pure interest, even at home on a weekend.
Yeah, like my family, at this point in my career, I'm probably spending as much time studying this for you guys as I ever have. Yeah, it's crazy.
Can't help but like it.
Yeah, I just see the benefit for you, for Doug, for people who understand this more and more. So then risk is the possibility of loss or an unexpected outcome. And one of our friends, Jack, talked to me about Blaise Pascal. Blaise Pascal became part of my life at Murray State University.
Is he a French guy?
It sounds French, wouldn't
French math?
Yeah. Let me double check here before I say this. Yeah, one of our friends on the show today may have been familiar with Blaise Pascal with me at the same time we did. That was taking Pascal programming language at Murray State. Yeah. And
Pascal would be proud of you guys.
Oh man, we were so cool. We were so cool. But my friend Jack said, "What do you think about Pascal's wager?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what that is." And so Pascal's wager.
This looks like a keep type thing.
Well, I didn't come up with it. Blaise Pascal did. He was trying to decide whether God existed or not. And when I look at this, this comes into risk. It comes into foolishness. It comes into all these ideas that we were talking about. And what Pascal said is, and this is, I think, biased towards the Christian God versus others, because I'm not sure how this fit. I don't know how the religions fit into it. But so if you look at the grid, Pascal said either God exists or he does not exist. And he's looking at it as a mathematician, maybe a philosopher too, but that's a reasonable wager or decision. God exists or he doesn't exist. And then he just said, either I believe or I don't believe. I don't, like, he's not looking at it emotionally, he's just saying matter of factly. And so if God doesn't exist, over there on the right, it says nothing happens. Like when I die, nothing happens. And so it says, if he doesn't exist, this whole argument, this whole wager is irrelevant, right? Like it doesn't matter.
I'm just laughing because I think it's kind of funny. It's, I take vitamins. I don't know if they work or not.
Right.
But this is different to me because like the box to the top left, it's just all good.
It's infinitely good, right?
Right now, like you don't even have to die to get it. It's
Right.
just good right now.
Well, and that doesn't even, that doesn't even say die in there, Doug. You implied that.
Yeah, I did imply that
Yeah,
because
I don't,
that's what fools think.
yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, it's infinite.
Infinitely means
If I
life.
believe that God exists, it's infinitely good, right?
Right
And
now.
if I don't believe it, it could be infinitely bad because the fool says in his heart there is no God, according to Solomon.
Yeah.
So if there's no God, there's no wisdom. And so whatever I'm circling around about, I can like things that seem very straightforward and simple, I don't have to put brain time on. People will ask me about, and they may be spending hours thinking about something to me that, like yesterday, a person called me and asked me about a difficult decision, and they were wanting my opinion on it, and I had a very straightforward, quick opinion. And then they were breaking the decision down into like 10 different decisions. And I said, well, first of all, I'm not gonna break that decision down into 10 decisions because it doesn't warrant my time. I'm just gonna make one decision out of that. And I can look at the variables, and I'm gonna say, every once in a while, I'll say it's a hand grenade decision, that it doesn't have to be precise. A hand grenade, if we threw it out there on the street, would blow something up.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have to hit it exactly. And so that's why I told them this decision they were trying to make, all the variables were out there. And I'm like, you can't know any decision until after it happens, right? But like for this decision, you're breaking it down into 10 decisions. I'm not going to give it that much brain time because the more decisions you make, the more stress it brings on you. And if you can bring it together to be one decision, why not do that and just live with the right or wrong decision? Yeah. And so foolishness can really create a lot of stress for you. But this was Pascal's wager, and it has everything to do with what I said at the beginning of this presentation, because when you go back and you say ignorance, foolishness, and risk, you can go back and say, I don't know, I'm ignorant, I don't know whether there's a God or not. That's what I did 30 some odd years ago. I don't know, I need some evidence. And so you can go kick the tires.
Kick the tires on God.
Yeah,
That's funny.
That's what I did. I just told him I didn't think he existed, right?
Yeah.
And that's
At least you're honest.
Yeah, that's ignorance.
Yeah.
Solomon said foolishness says there is no God, and I think that's true. I don't mean to offend any of you that don't believe there is. I just think, like, if you go out on a starry night, look up in the sky, well, how do you stop and explain that? And so then risk is believing there's a God. I think it takes all risk out of life, because his answer, if you go back to the definition of risk, the possibility of loss or an unexpected outcome, the God that I believe, there is no possibility of loss with him, and there's no unexpected outcome because he explains what those are. And so risk, with that belief from Pascal, risk basically goes away in the most important elements of life.
So what do you do with that being said when you're in the trenches?
In the trenches, and say that in
when you're going through suffering loss, when you're going through the really hard areas of life, the unknowns of life.
Yeah, and so part of that's what bangs around up here in my cranium, which you've explored some of that over the years. You never know. I mean, generally not going to tell you, but I think what you do, like what I do, is the external Keith is deteriorating or depreciating or falling apart over time. The inner Keith is the one that I try to express through this body, and there ain't nothing gonna shake it. Like, I've had a lot of difficulty in the last 48 months, probably personally, and it didn't really shake me. I mean, it made my body angry and frustrated, but my inner person, I think, navigated some of those things pretty amazingly.
One of my weapons for times like that is I have a book. It's in my lower drawer. If anybody ever needs it here in the office, it's called In Case of Emergency. That's what I titled it, In Case of Emergency. And it's got some pretty great Doug Shreve lived through this stories. And some of those really were not great. And just to have some proof that we made it through is such an encouragement to me.
And I know all of you watching today have some of those stories too. But my friend Gary Stump told me that, like, how you gain faith, like that faith is kind of that unknown future, right? Like how you gain that is looking back at what you've come through. And unfortunately, my experience is the stuff that used to rock your world when you were a teenager,
Yeah,
it doesn't rock your world. And so what's going to rock my world going forward, it's got to be pretty darn big compared to what's rocked. I mean, I've had big things in the last 4 or 5 years. So what's going to rock in the future is going to have to be pretty major. But that's just life, right? Yeah. Well, you guys, you probably never knew risk was such a philosophical idea, but Blaise Pascal put it out there. He thought about it with his wager, and the idea of being able to explain to you how we think differently about risk today than I'd say 5 years ago, even.
oh goodness. I think it's just been wonderful since about 2019.
I think the first time Mark Minervini helped me in one part of risk, and you hadn't got there yet. And I remember we were standing back behind the garage, and I was trying to explain it to you.
Yeah.
And I saw the glaze look on
Yeah.
your eye, and I go, "This may be the most important aspect of risk that
Are
nobody's
you
taught
talking
me.
about batting average?
Not just batting average, but the like allocation, how you decided allocation. Batting average is part of it.
Batting average was huge to me.
Yeah, because we were taught, and most of you have heard asset allocation is how you deal with risk, but it doesn't deal with risk. It just averages out where you put money. And if you put all your money in asset allocation in bad asset classes,
Yeah.
you've just made bad decisions.
What Keith and I were taught, and what you were probably taught, whether you know it or not, was Morningstar, a respectable firm out there that helps people gauge risk. And what they would say is you sprinkle your investments out between 9 categories, 9 boxes. And that's going to be some growth, some value, some mid cap, some small cap, some international. And so you sprinkle these things out to avoid the risk. And what you end up with is you don't know what you have. And you're at the mercy of the fund manager at this point, who they just get paid off babysitting your assets. They want you to just stay there because they're going to make money as you stay there. And what it leads towards is diversification, is you got stuff everywhere.
Well, and one of the things they don't tell you as well is it may work over time, right? Like diversification may work over time. Historically, and they're using such a statistically small sample that it's not really a valid sample. Like nobody would tell you it's valid sample, but the regulators let them use those statistically small samples to project these things and then put past performance is no guarantee of the future to get themselves off the hook of it. But the data sample is not big enough to do that. And so that allocation thing is fine and dandy if you live long enough. And asset allocation
Or
is
if the event in your life allows you to do that.
right. And so asset allocation, if you're 80, may not work. If you're 70, it may not work. Like the NASDAQ dropped 80% between 2000 and 2003. And the math to recoup from that, if you were 70 or 80 years old and you had even 25% of your money in there, your probably overall portfolio is not going to recover very well.
You've seen the stock chart. We've thrown it up there. It's just data. And we've thrown it up there from, don't worry about it, Keith, but from 2000 to like, well, 2011 or 13 or something. It just took a long time to get back.
Yeah. And so the idea of risk has probably been the greatest revolution to Gimbal's thought processes in the last decade, even maybe ever. It may be the way we're looking at risk today, may be the greatest thing that we've ever done on behalf of you all.
I also think the byproduct is the way we look at opportunity. And the opportunity is not, hey, we hope this works out. It's America. It'll do great. No, is this thing getting traction? And the way we can tell if it is or if it isn't, it's just price and volume. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. And next week, if you want to join us again, I think we'll just go into some of the math and talk about risk. And I'm looking forward to talking about the mathematics of risk rather than the touchy-feely things that you might see in a lot of financial publications. And just hang in there. It's going to be all right. It may not. You may not live long enough.
And on that note, we wish you a great
How's
weekend.
that? How's that for some affirming ideas, Doug?
But while you are living, go for it. And Keith, here's one thing I was going to hang on. This is bonus material. I saw this for Keith. Okay. keep in the news. Evansville is paying people to move there. So far, they've had 15 households and 31 people take them up on this offer. And I don't know where the money's coming from, but if you want to Google something, I know we're eating into overtime here. If you want to Google something interesting, just Google like Evansville is paying me to move there or something like that. And you'll see an article pop up where they will incentivize you with dollars, coffee with the mayor, some type of park pass. Noblesville's doing it too. I don't know if this is socialism or what's going on, but it's interesting.
We have to go, we're gonna have to go a little farther after you kick. I can't stop there, Doug. We call it Evansville. We got a good portion of our crowd today with Evansville associated with it. So you guys, if you'll get back, maybe email me and update me on this. But Evansville, we're gonna go, I'm gonna come at you, Evansville, okay? So risk, reward, they let me down. I'm gonna go at the Evansville Museum, and we're going back a decade. So any of you watching, do you know what I'm going at?
No, but
Go
ahead.
This is risk worthy. If I were an Evansville citizen, I'd have gone at the leadership on this deal. So sometime in the last 10 or 15 years, the Evansville Museum gets a call. Hey, how much you sell your Picasso for?
Oh, okay.
They said, we do not own a Picasso. The caller said, my records say you guys have a Picasso. Evansville said, let us get back to you on that. They hit the button. Hey, do we have a Picasso here? Janitor said, I don't know. I'll go down in the basement and scrounge around down there. Day or two later, janitor calls back. We got this funky looking painting down here that looks like it says Picasso on it. Thank you. It sat in the basement, I think 30 years. Again, you're gonna have to check the details on this. In a crate, never displayed for the citizens of Evansville.
It's been a more enlightened man.
Never displayed, and I don't think they ever did. I don't, if you've got your Evansville ties and you want to update me on the story, I think if you could let it rot in the basement, you could put it on display for the citizens. You could pay whatever you need to pay to have it on display, but I don't think they ever displayed it for the citizens. So they may pay you to come, but I want to see the Picasso. I'll come down to see the Picasso. Sorry, Doug, you kicked me off on this thing. So that's risk. The risk that they never, it was just as risky sitting in the basement and they never displayed it. I don't think for the citizens.
Well, Pete, the data that I read this week said that 25 minutes on a Zoom is about all people can.
Sorry, friends, we took you overtime. 2 minutes. Be affirmed. We love you.
Bye-bye.